Welcome to Payments Playbook, the show where we explore the strategies and systems that drive smarter payments, stronger cash flow, and more profitable business. Brought to you by Paylink, the business-to-business payment experts. Now let's dive into today's episode. For today's episode of Payments Playbook, we have Tim Kane with Treeworks. Welcome, Tim. Thanks for being here.
Hey, Paul, my pleasure. Thanks for reaching out. Excited to be here today.
Sounds great. To start with, Tim, can you share a little bit about Treeworks and your role with the company?
Yeah, absolutely. Treeworks is a product manufacturer and cannabis product brand based out of Massachusetts. So we started operating about a little over 4 years ago here in Massachusetts. It took us a few years pre-licensing to get open and operational, and since we've opened up, we've found success selling our products into Massachusetts dispensaries and with Massachusetts cannabis consumers. So we make a variety of products. We started out with our cannabis tinctures, and since then we've evolved our line to involve infused topicals, vaporizer cartridges, gummies, chocolates, you name it.
And you're primarily located in Massachusetts, correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's where our license is. That's where we've done most of our business. We just linked up with a partner in New Jersey who started to make our tinctures for sale on the New Jersey market. So that's our first expansion to another state.
Yeah, and I would expect the licensing, each state you go into, you have to get licensing and whatever requirements there are.
Yeah, since cannabis is still federally illegal, there's no cross-state transport of any cannabis products. So because of that, it does make it challenging for distribution. We're pretty limited to buying the cannabis flower from licensed cultivators here in Massachusetts, and then we're only able to sell into the licensed retailers in Mass. However, if you do possess the license in another state, then you're able to distribute to the partners in that state.
Okay. You know, regarding Treeworks, it's my understanding you started it with a couple of your friends. What inspired you to found the company and be a leader within the company?
Yeah, totally. Always been passionate about cannabis, and I've always wanted to run my own business as well. And grew up in Massachusetts, and both of my co-founders are from Massachusetts as well. So the opportunity came around when Massachusetts became the first recreational legal state east of the Rocky Mountains, where saw an opportunity to start a business. And we thought it'd be easy, just sign up, submit for a license, and voila. But it was definitely a lot harder than we expected. But yeah, just passionate about the plant, and thought it'd be really fun to make a lot of awesome products from the cannabis plant. So that's really where that
Excellent.
originally started from.
Excellent. You know, you mentioned when you first started, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced setting up in the early days, and how did you overcome them?
Well, I think the licensing process was the most challenging piece early on. The regulating body in Massachusetts, the Cannabis Control Commission, or the CCC, was really understaffed in the early days. And because Massachusetts was the first state to go legal in the East Coast, there was a lot of applications for licenses, including ours. And in order to even submit for a license, you have to have all of the approval from the municipality, from the town that you're trying to operate in, which includes having a properly zoned facility that you're paying rent or paying a holding cost or that you own. In our case, we were paying rent on it. And that's just to apply for the license. So we went through that whole process to apply for the license. And then we had to wait for almost 2 years before getting up and running. So during that time, as you can imagine, we were burning through what little startup capital we had, and banging our heads against the wall, like wondering,
Yeah.
when are we going to get open and running? We called Steve, but we didn't have a direct contact, so it was really hard to communicate with anyone, get any sort of update on when we would possibly be open. So that was really challenging in the early days.
Yeah, that had to be major league frustrating. I can't imagine. You know, you're dependent on,
Definitely.
it's one of those things. They were framing the legalities or the licensing as you were starting. So, yeah, very frustrating, no question. Now that you're up and running, what's working well for you right now, and what still is frustrating or challenging for you?
So I think our place in the market has us in a strong spot from the start of the company. We really focused on making the highest quality products that we possibly could. So I think that in a market where there wasn't really any brand loyalty or very little brand loyalty because it was so brand new to everyone, we got consumers to understand and to associate our brand and our products with quality that they can trust and get a high quality product that has very similar experience every time. And I think being able to do that early on when there were very few players in the market and to kind of gain that reputation
Yep.
and grow that customer base has been really, really positive for us. And now, as the market has continued to expand, and you look on a menu of a Massachusetts dispensary, and there's 30 different gummy brands to choose from, a lot of choices, a lot of flashy colors, and I think what resonates with consumers is the Treeworks brand is associated with quality, and they know what they're getting when they buy one.
In regard to, talking about brand loyalty, how do you maintain the strong relationships with your clients or your partners, your dispensaries? Do you have anything in place, or are you relying pretty much on your brand identity and loyalty?
I think that's a big piece of the business is connecting with our partners in the industry, whether it be the cultivators we're buying the flower from or the retailers we're selling into or the testing lab. We definitely want to, you know, kind of be ambassadors for the industry. And I think one thing that's really nice and kind of fun about the cannabis industry is there's a lot of like industry events that we are active participants in. The big one in Boston is there was one actually right down the road from where our office is in Northampton called the Flower Expo last week. And then there's all sorts of like, other events going on throughout the year. And one that I participated in recently that I thought was really fun was a ping pong tournament that was geared to people within the industry called Bong and Pong.
All
And
right.
so, silly things like that, but really getting out across the state, meeting our partners that are passionate about the product, that sell the product or grow the flower that we extract in house. And I think that's been really helpful. Is just a phone call is nice or a Zoom call is nice, but getting out there in person and
Yeah.
meeting people and everyone shares common interests, not just cannabis, but a lot of other common interests as well. And I've always just been very impressed with the kind of people that get brought to the industry. It's a really good group of people and people that I love to associate and work with. So it's really easy for me.
Oh, absolutely. And building a relationship with customers, in today's world, you don't always get that. And I think it's important to develop a relationship when you can.
Mhm.
What
Absolutely.
what do you see for industry trends for 2025? The cannabis industry is a little different than most. Are you seeing any major trends?
The biggest shift I see in the Massachusetts cannabis market is towards the solventless products. So we have a solventless extraction lab where we make water bubble hash that we press into live rosin. And that's a trend that we're starting to see in more developed and more mature cannabis markets. Basically, when you're making cannabis extracts, most are made with some sort of solvent, whether it be butane or propane or something like that, whereas the solventless extraction is really kind of the purest form of extraction that preserves the cannabis terpene profile the best. So basically, it's the closest experience to smoking the whole flower. That's the biggest trend that I've seen in our sales and in just sales across the industry and what competing brands are releasing as products. You're seeing a lot of solvent products enter the market and you're seeing a lot of consumer uptake with those.
Yep.
I think another trend is we're starting to see the market level out a little bit too. When the market first opened up and there were just a few operators that were selling, everybody was making money and successful kind of regardless of what their business model was and how well they were running their operation. And now as the market has saturated more and sort of meeting the demand that consumers are looking for, we're starting to see it regulate a bit and starting to see places go out of business that aren't running a good operation.
Yeah, and I would say as they mature, the good ones are going to stay in business. Another trend is that there's other states legalizing it. There's more and more legalizing it.
Totally. And so that means that the dispensaries on the borders of Massachusetts, which were early the best sellers, if you're in Great Barrington, Mass, which is close to New York City, the closest one you can get to from New York City, those dispensaries were doing incredible right off the bat. But now that New York has legalized their industry, Vermont, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Maine, we're starting to see a little less of that. We do still get cannabis tourism, but not to the extent that it used to be, where some of those dispensaries would see like 3/4 of their traffic from out of state.
Right. Yep. As you grow the business, what do you see as some of the major challenges as you continue to grow and expand?
Well, I think being in a new industry, it's just very dynamic and changes really fast.
Right.
Hard to say what the future will hold. Just the outcome of a presidential election could sway things. Who's in power. The state level here in Massachusetts can swing things greatly. So because of that, you have to be really dynamic and flexible, which I think is a strength of our business. But it's also a challenge because
Yeah.
things can change really quickly, and you can't get beholden to one strategy, even if it has proven successful in the past.
Yep. No, I agree. You got to stay on top of it and you have to adapt to whatever the industry brings to you, which is not always easy.
Totally. Yeah, and cannabis is very unique in the sense that it is legal in a lot of states, but still federally illegal. So you have what we call MSOs, the multi-state operators that will have a presence in a bunch of different states across the country. And
Okay.
they in Massachusetts, they'll sometimes be willing to sell at such a low price that they're actually operating at a loss, but they're retaining their market share here in Massachusetts while they're operating profitably in other states. And that's kind of an aggressive tactic to try and push companies out of business for an independent operator. And I know we're in a second state now, but we're still by and large an independent operator. It's just challenging to compete in that environment.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So the cannabis industry is unique as far as accepting payments and managing cash flow. What is your process and how do you do it? Because there's a lot of legalities around it.
Definitely. And we put a heavy focus on accounts receivable. I think credit reporting and credit rating in the industry is improving, but early on didn't really exist. Everyone was offering payment terms to everybody, but not always getting paid. And that's really tough to deal with. So credit reporting is getting better. We have a pretty tight SOP. We spend a lot of time, probably more time than I would like to, talking about receivables and talking about strategy around that.
Yep.
But it does seem to be improving, and I know that the state legislature here in Massachusetts is trying to take some action to try and protect some of the businesses that are operating. It is tough, you can't file for bankruptcy as a cannabis business. So if someone goes out of business and they owe you money, good luck collecting it.
Really?
Kind of,
It's
kind of what we
interesting.
found. Yeah, yeah.
So are you doing pretty much the traditional ways? They send you a check, or are you allowing ACH? Have you found a bank to allow you to do ACH transactions or credit cards? Because I know Elevon was big at one time in the cannabis industry, and they pretty much shut down for everybody. Have you had any issues with that, being able to take credit cards or ACH?
Yeah, I haven't seen much in the way of credit cards. We do have a cannabis bank account, so we're able to take ACH payments. And there was a lot of fear when we first started, like, oh, it's a lot's getting done in cash, and that actually hasn't proven to be the case for us. Something that has improved. That was more of an issue, like maybe in Colorado when they very first started.
Right.
Massachusetts banking has been reasonable. We were paying an outrageous fee for our account when we first started, but just kind of came with the territory, and that sort of moderated as well. So.
Why would you mention a cannabis account? Is it a special type account you set up at the bank to be able to do that?
Yeah, I think they just have stricter regulatory protocols, get a yearly inspection,
Okay.
more transparency into our banks. I don't know the specific differences, but I think it's just higher regulated, is what it seems like.
Yeah, well, that's interesting because I know some in Colorado from years back, and they could pretty much take cash only, and that was problematic because they would be walking around with all this cash.
Yeah.
And in my opinion, it's a low risk business, right? They come to the dispensary, they buy their product, and they make a payment. But I know a lot of the card brands, due to the federal regulations, it makes it a little cumbersome, tough to do, but interesting.
We found that like a big challenge has been just the access to capital. A standard bank loan that you could get for another comparable business just isn't available, or the terms are pretty outrageous usually.
Yep, I believe it. As far as the year ahead, what are some of the big goals or your key goals for the year ahead?
Yeah, totally. Here in Massachusetts, our big goals are to continue to grow the brand and, kind of in my role being more linked with operations, I'm always looking to improve our systems, give and receive feedback, find ways that we can operate more efficiently, leaner, and really integrating departments throughout the business as well. That's
Yep.
something that as we've grown from like a smaller startup to a larger business that's now operating in multi-states, just trying to integrate everyone in a cohesive manner. That's kind of like my personal goal of the role. I know if you spoke to my business partners, they may say something completely different, might be releasing this new awesome product or something like that. But in the role that I'm in, that's a lot what I'm working on. And yeah, I think with out of state growth, getting a solid presence in these other markets, that's a big goal as well.
Yeah, the efficiency part, that's an ongoing battle, and you're always trying to be more efficient because it leads to the bottom line profitability.
Mhm.
For someone listening to the podcast, how do people find out more about Treeworks and how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, sure. So our website, treeworkscollective.com. Definitely check it out. It's got a lot of information about our products, where you can find them, how we make them, the process, a lot of stuff about the business there. And then for me directly, I'm not a big social media guy. You found me on LinkedIn. That's my one go-to platform. So definitely, find me there, give me a buzz. I'd love to collaborate. So yeah,
Yep.
I'd recommend.
Excellent. It's an interesting industry, and in 5 years, it's going to look completely different than it does now.
Yeah. And I'm excited to see what the future holds. I know people love the cannabis plant and it's not going anywhere, and we just got to find a way and for us all to work together to bring the industry up. So,
I 100% agree.